The scent of lilies always did something to me, but today it was twisted, a floral punch to the gut. White lilies and pink roses, Melissa's favorites apparently. I stood there in the flower shop, the cellophane crinkling under my accidental grip. It wasn't my memory, this flower preference. It was a stolen piece of information, gleaned from the digital wreckage of my girlfriend's, no, our life. Just last night, on what was supposed to be our date night, the one where we finally had a moment alone after her crazy work schedule, I'd seen them. The texts. Emma's phone, left carelessly on the bedside table while she showered. Glowing little betrayals, messages to Jake, her ex, plans, whispers, laughter I hadn't been a part of, and something about Melissa's birthday, today. "Everything all right, sir?" The florist, a kind-faced woman with flour dusting her apron, smiled patiently. I forced a smile back, my own feeling brittle. "Yes, perfect." I cleared my throat. "I need a card." She handed me a small, cream-colored square. My hand was surprisingly steady as I uncapped the pen. The ink flowed, dark and definitive. "Happy birthday, Melissa. Love always, Jake." A wave of something hot and cold washed over me. Hurt, sharp and piercing. Betrayal. A dull ache that had been sitting in my chest for weeks, now throbbing with fresh agony. But beneath it, a strange, unwelcome curiosity. A desire to understand the landscape of this other life Emma was apparently living. Who was this Melissa? What power did Jake still hold? My phone buzzed in my pocket, a frantic vibration against my thigh. "Emma. Hey, still on for tonight? Can't believe it's been 6 months. Ticks. 6 months. Our anniversary. The irony was a bitter pill. I typed back a quick, "Yep, looking forward to it." No mention of the bouquet clutched in my hand, a floral Trojan horse. No mention of the storm brewing inside me. The florist was tying a pink ribbon around the stems, her movements practiced and gentle. It looked beautiful. A perfect gift. From the wrong man. 6 months ago, I believed I'd finally found someone who was fully present in our relationship. Someone whose eyes didn't drift when I spoke, whose laughter felt like it was only for me. I was wrong, but tonight would change everything, just not in the way anyone expected. I paid for the flowers, the scent of lilies and roses clinging to me like a shroud. Or maybe, just maybe, like armor. It was Sarah's housewarming, 6 months back. The kind of party where everyone knows everyone, except for the 1 or 2 stragglers. That was me. I was nursing a beer in the corner, trying to look like I was deeply contemplating the structural integrity of a bookshelf, when I heard it, this laugh. It wasn't delicate or restrained. It was a full-bodied, joyful noise that cut through the party chatter. I looked up, and there was Emma. She was mid-story, hands gesturing animatedly, a bright, genuine smile lighting up her face. Later, Sarah, bless her meddling heart, introduced us. Emma tilted her head, that infectious laugh softening into a warm smile. "David, right? Sarah's told me you're the genius architect." I mumbled something about not being a genius, just someone who liked buildings that didn't fall down. She actually listened, asked questions. Not just polite party questions, but real ones, about inspiration, about the challenges of design. It was disarming. Our first date was at a tiny Italian place, the kind with checkered tablecloths and Chianti in wicker baskets. We were supposed to just grab a quick dinner. We ended up talking until the owner started pointedly stacking chairs on tables. Emma spoke about her work as an event planner, the chaos and creativity of it all. She had this way of making even a stressful client sound like a hilarious anecdote. But there was a flicker of something else, too. A slight hesitation when I asked about her last relationship. "Oh, that," she'd said, waving a dismissive hand, but her eyes told a different story. Recent breakup. Still, you know. I did know. My own last relationship had ended in a spectacular flameout of infidelity, leaving me with a healthy dose of trust issues I was still trying to unpack. Maybe that's why I didn't push. The moment I knew I was falling for her wasn't grand or dramatic. It was a rainy Saturday. We ducked into a museum to escape a downpour. Standing in front of some massive, abstract painting, Emma had made a joke, something silly about what the artist must have been thinking. And I just felt it. This sense of ease, of rightness, like a key finally fitting a lock. She introduced me to her friends soon after. A tight-knit group, fiercely loyal. They grilled me, subtly at first, then more openly. But by the end of the night, there were nods of approval, genuine smiles. "You're good for her," one of them, Chloe, had said, giving me a pat on the arm. It felt like passing a crucial test. Things were looking up. I let myself believe this was it. This was real. Those next few months were a blur of good things. Weekend trips to little coastal towns, the salty air whipping through our hair as we walked hand in hand on deserted beaches. We cooked together in her small, sunny kitchen, usually ending up with more flour on ourselves than in the bowl, laughing until our sides ached. I met her parents, she met mine. It all felt so normal. So blessedly, wonderfully normal. For the first time in years, that knot of anxiety in my chest, the one that always whispered, "When will this go wrong?" started to loosen. I felt secure. Emma was a whirlwind of energy. Her job as an event planner meant her schedule was often unpredictable. Elaborate weddings one weekend, corporate galas the next. Sometimes our plans had to shift last minute. A fancy dinner reservation traded for takeout eaten on her living room floor, amidst swatches of fabric and seating charts. I didn't mind, mostly. I admired her passion, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about pulling off a challenging event. Our communication styles were different, though. I'm direct. If something's bothering me, I want to talk about it. Get it out in the open. Emma was a smoother. She preferred to glide over the difficult bits, to keep things light. "Don't worry about it," she'd say, a little too brightly, if I tried to bring up something that felt a bit off. I told myself it was just her way, that not everyone needed to dissect every little thing. The night she gave me a key to her apartment felt significant. We'd been out for dinner, a quiet Tuesday. Back at her place, she'd fumbled in her purse, then pressed the cool metal into my palm. "So you don't have to wait in the hallway like a delivery guy anymore," she'd joked, but her eyes were serious. It felt like a promise. A step forward. We built a comfortable rhythm. Morning coffee, her humming along to the radio as she got ready for work. Sunday brunches, lazy and long, filled with newspapers and too many pancakes. Netflix marathons curled up on her sofa, her head on my shoulder. There were small arguments, of course. Whose turn it was to do the dishes, what movie to watch, the usual domestic squabbles. But they always blew over quickly, resolved with a laugh or a hug. It felt healthy, it felt real. I was happy. Genuinely, uncomplicatedly happy. Or so I thought. It started subtly. A slight shift in the atmosphere, like the air pressure dropping before a storm. Emma began to seem distracted. During our dates, her gaze would sometimes drift, her responses a beat too slow. Her phone, once a casual accessory, became an extension of her hand, always buzzing, always demanding her attention. I'd notice her texting late at night, the screen's glow illuminating her face in the darkness of the bedroom. I wouldn't ask who it was. I didn't want to be that guy, the jealous, insecure boyfriend. I'd had enough of that in my past. I told myself it was work. Her job was demanding. Then, at a mutual friend's barbecue, I think it was Chloe's new boyfriend, bless his clueless heart, casually mentioned Jake. "Oh yeah, Emma's ex, Jake, right? He was at that gig with us last week. Small world, huh?" A beat of silence. Emma's smile tightened just a fraction. "Oh, Jake? Yeah, we run in some of the same circles. It's no big deal." Later, when we were alone, I tried to ask carefully. "So Jake's still around then?" "Honestly, David, it's nothing," she said, that overly bright tone creeping back into her voice. "We dated, it ended, people move on. It's really not something you need to worry about." She squeezed my hand, a gesture that was meant to be reassuring but felt more like a deflection. But a seed of insecurity had been planted. It was a small, ugly thing, and I tried to uproot it, to trust her completely. I reminded myself of my past, of how my ex's cheating had made me paranoid. I didn't want to bring that baggage into this relationship. Emma was different, wasn't she? The canceled plans started to become more frequent. Last-minute work emergencies that pulled her away. Vague explanations that left me feeling adrift. I'd try to be understanding, but that old, familiar ache of doubt began to resurface. One rainy afternoon, I was at her apartment alone, waiting for her to get back from a supposed client meeting. I was browse her bookshelf, looking for something to read, when a small, worn photograph slipped out from between the pages of a novel. It was Emma and a guy I didn't recognize, laughing, arms around each other, looking very much like a couple. He had that easy, confident smile. I had a sinking feeling I knew who it was. Jake. The photo was tucked away, hidden, like a secret. My stomach twisted. I put the photo back, exactly where I'd found it. But I couldn't shake the image or the questions it raised. Our 6-month anniversary was approaching. I decided to plan something special. A really nice dinner at that new place downtown everyone was raving about. Maybe a grand gesture, a reminder of what we had, would be enough to bridge this growing distance, to chase away the shadows. Maybe it would be enough to make her look at me, really look at me, again. 2 weeks before our official anniversary, I decided a pre-anniversary date night was in order. Things had been strained. Not overtly, not in a way you could pinpoint with a specific argument, but there was a subtle hum of disconnect. I wanted to recapture some of that early magic, so I planned to cook. Emma loved my, admittedly limited repertoire, pasta carbonara. It was her comfort food. I got home from work early, a rare occurrence, and set about transforming my usually minimalist kitchen into something resembling an Italian trattoria. Candles flickered. A playlist of her favorite indie folk music filled the air, and the aroma of sizzling pancetta and garlic was starting to work its magic. I even bought a decent bottle of red. I was feeling hopeful. This would be good. We needed this. Just as I was about to drop the pasta into the boiling water, my phone rang. Emma. "Hey!" Her voice was rushed, a little breathless. "Oh my God, David, I'm so sorry. You're not going to believe this." My stomach did a slow, uneasy flip. "What's up?" "Work. Total emergency. One of my biggest clients, their keynote speaker for tomorrow's conference, just bailed. I have to go down to the venue, like right now, and try to sort it out. I'm going to be hours. I'm so incredibly sorry. I was really looking forward to tonight." The disappointment was a sharp, physical pang. I looked around at the carefully set table, the flickering candles. "Oh, okay, no, it's fine. Work's work, right?" I tried to keep my voice light, understanding. Inside, something deflated. "You're the best," she said, relief flooding her tone. "I'll make it up to you, I promise. Save me some of that amazing carbonara." "Sure thing." We said our goodbyes, and I stood there in the sudden silence of my apartment, the scent of garlic and pancetta now feeling a little mocking. I carefully ladled the sauce into a container, wrapped up the pasta, and put it in the fridge. for later. Later that night, I was mindlessly scrolling through Instagram, a habit I was trying to break. A story popped up. One of Emma's colleagues, a junior event planner I'd met a couple of times. A group shot, clinking glasses, bright smiles. And there, in the background, slightly out of focus but unmistakably her, was Emma. Her name tag from the event company was visible. She was at some sort of celebration. It looked like a birthday party complete with a cake and balloons, not a crisis meeting at a conference venue. My heart began to pound. A cold wave of suspicion washed over me. It could be a misunderstanding, I told myself. Maybe the crisis was resolved quickly, and they went for a drink after? Maybe it was a client's birthday, part of the sorting it out. My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation, trying to bridge the gap between what she'd told me and what I was seeing. Trust, I reminded myself. Trust her. But the image lingered. That niggle of doubt, the one I'd been trying to suppress, grew louder. I decided to do something I hadn't done before, something that felt a little stalkerish. I grabbed the container of leftover carbonara. A nice gesture, I told myself. I'd just drop it by her apartment. If she was home, great. If not, I'd leave it with her doorman. Her lights were off. I buzzed her apartment anyway. No answer. The doorman confirmed she wasn't in. The work emergency should have been over by now, surely. It was past 10 p.m. I sat in my car across the street from her building, the container of rapidly cooling pasta beside me on the passenger seat. Waiting. Doubting. Feeling like a fool. It was nearly 1 a.m. when her car finally pulled into the underground garage. She looked tired, but not particularly stressed. And she was alone. I watched her disappear into the building, then started my car and drove home. The uneaten carbonara a cold, heavy lump in my gut. The next morning, Emma was all sunshine and apologies. "Oh my God, David, thank you so much for dropping off the pasta. That was so sweet. I got in super late. That work thing was a nightmare." She pecked me on the cheek, her usual breezy self. No mention of where she'd actually been, or how late. I kept my voice casual. "No problem. Saw Sarah's Instagram story last night. Looked like you guys managed to squeeze in a celebration after the drama." Her eyes flickered, just for a second. "Oh, that. Yeah, totally last minute. One of the team members had a birthday, so a few of us grabbed a quick drink with the client after we finally sorted out the speaker situation. It was still mostly work, honestly." She laughed, a little too quickly. "Networking, you know?" I wanted to believe her. I really did. But the explanation felt flimsy, stitched together. Something was off. The way she avoided my gaze, the slight tremor in her voice. But I let it go. What else could I do? Accuse her based on a gut feeling and a blurry Instagram photo? A week later, the universe, or maybe just Emma's carelessness, handed me the proof I hadn't been looking for, but now desperately, morbidly needed. It was a Saturday morning. We'd had a lazy breakfast. Emma went to take a shower, leaving her phone unlocked on the coffee table. It lay there, screen dark, a silent black rectangle. My heart hammered against my ribs. "Don't do it," I told myself. "Respect her privacy. This is how relationships die, through suspicion and snooping." But another voice, colder and more insistent, whispered, "You need to know. You deserve to know if you're being played for a fool." The internal debate raged for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only a minute. My hand trembled as I reached for the phone. The screen lit up with her familiar wallpaper. A photo of us, smiling, from that weekend trip to the coast. A fresh wave of guilt washed over me, but I was already in too deep. My thumb hovered over the messaging app. I tapped, and there they were. Dozens of messages. Not with Sarah or any of her work colleagues. With Jake. My breath caught in my throat. I scrolled, a sick feeling coiling in my stomach. The messages weren't just casual, friendly check-ins. They were intimate, full of inside jokes I didn't understand, shared memories I wasn't a part of. And then I saw it. The reason for her work emergency 2 weeks prior. "Can't wait for M's B-Day bash. You're still good to help me make it epic, right? Like old times." That was Jake. Emma's reply, "Of course, wouldn't miss it. She deserves the best. We always did know how to throw her a party." M's birthday? Melissa, Jake's ex, Melissa. Whose birthday, I quickly pieced together from further texts, was on the exact same day as our 6-month anniversary. Emma wasn't just attending. She was actively involved in planning it with Jake, making it special. Like they always did when they were together. The dates, the timelines, it all clicked into place with horrifying clarity. I scrolled further, a knot of dread tightening in my chest. I learned that Jake and Emma hadn't just dated casually. They'd been together for 4 years. 4 years. They'd only broken up 8 months ago, just 2 months before she and I met. There were messages from Emma to Jake that made my blood run cold. "Sometimes I miss you like crazy. It's just complicated, you know? He's a great guy, David, really, but that fucking but. Confusion about what she wanted. Lingering feelings for Jake. I felt like I was going to be sick." I carefully placed the phone back on the coffee table, exactly as I'd found it. Screen down. My hands were shaking. My mind was a chaotic mess of anger, betrayal, and a profound, hollow sadness. The shower shut off. Emma emerged a few minutes later, wrapped in a towel, humming softly. She smiled when she saw me. "Hey, what are you up to?" Completely, blissfully unaware of the bomb that had just detonated in my world. Later that day, she brought up our anniversary. "So, 6 months next week. Still on for that fancy dinner you booked?" Her voice was bright, excited. I looked at her, really looked at her. At the woman I thought I knew. The woman I thought I was building a future with. And with a calmness that surprised even myself, I replied, "Yeah, wouldn't miss it." The words tasted like ash in my mouth. That next week was a masterclass in duplicity. Mostly hers, but a little bit mine, too. I walked around in a daze, a shell of myself. Every interaction with Emma felt like a performance. Her casual touches, her "I love yous" before hanging up the phone, her cheerful chatter about her day, it all felt like a carefully constructed lie. And I, in turn, played the part of the blissfully ignorant boyfriend. It was exhausting. My nights were spent staring at the ceiling, replaying those text messages in my head, each one a fresh stab of pain. My days were a blur of feigned normalcy. At work, I found it impossible to concentrate. Architectural plans swam before my eyes, lines blurring into meaningless squiggles. I started digging. Not on Emma's phone again. I couldn't bring myself to do that. But online. Social media became my unwilling informant. I found Melissa. Her profile was public, and there it was, plain as day. Birthday listed as October 17th. Our anniversary. My stomach churned. Through a convoluted trail of mutual friends and tagged photos, I pieced together more of the story, the ugly, tangled history between Jake, Emma, and Melissa. It turned out Jake hadn't just dated Melissa before Emma. He'd dated Melissa, then cheated on Melissa with Emma about 2 years ago. A messy, dramatic affair that had apparently rocked their social circle. Ultimately, Jake had chosen to go back to Melissa, leaving Emma heartbroken. Until, that is, Jake and Melissa had their more recent, final breakup, the one that happened just before Emma and I got together. And Emma? Emma had apparently stepped right back in, not as Jake's girlfriend, but as his emotional support through his latest breakup with Melissa. The timeline was a sickening overlap. She'd been comforting Jake, reminiscing with Jake, possibly rekindling something with Jake, all while starting a new relationship with me. I wasn't a fresh start. I was a distraction? A placeholder? The thought made me feel ill. As our anniversary, their birthday celebration, loomed closer, Emma became increasingly distracted, her phone glued to her hand more than ever. Quick, hushed phone calls she'd take in the other room. Flurries of texts that would make her smile secretly, or sometimes frown with an anxiety she tried to hide. I could have confronted her. I played out the scene 100 times in my mind. The accusations, the tears, the inevitable, messy breakup. But something held me back. It felt too easy, too predictable. She'd likely deny, deflect, minimize. She was good at that. And what would it achieve? A screaming match? A hollow victory? The idea came to me, oddly enough, while I was staring out my office window, watching a flower delivery van pull up to the building across the street. A courier emerged, carrying a ridiculously large bouquet. Flowers, a gesture, a message. She was living in 2 relationships at once, balancing 2 lives, 2 men. Maybe it was time she saw what that looked like from the outside. Maybe it was time all the players in this little drama understood exactly what game was being played. The thought solidified, cold and hard in my mind. I wouldn't just confront her. I would do something unconventional, something that would bring everything out into the open, not just for me, but for everyone involved. The first step was research. Not the emotional, frantic kind I'd done before, but targeted, methodical. I needed to know more about Melissa. I scrolled through years of her social media, work, friends, hobbies, and birthdays. Lots of birthday posts. And there, in several of them, were flowers. The same kind, year after year. White lilies and pink roses. Always from Jake. Sometimes a casual mention in a caption, "Thanks for the beautiful flowers, Jay." Sometimes a photo of the bouquet itself, prominent in the celebratory pictures. It was their thing. White lilies and pink roses. The irony wasn't lost on me. The very flowers I'd instinctively, painfully gravitated towards in that shop earlier. Next, the dinner reservation. I'd already booked it, Le Verre, one of the most expensive, exclusive restaurants in the city. The kind of place you went to for proposals, for grand romantic gestures. Perfect. I confirmed the booking, even upgraded to their premium champagne package. If we were going to have a memorable anniversary, it was going to be for all the wrong reasons. Then, the flowers. I found a reputable online florist with same-day delivery. I carefully selected a large, extravagant bouquet of white lilies and blush pink roses. Address? Melissa's workplace. I'd found that easily enough on her LinkedIn profile. Delivery for the afternoon of our anniversary. The card was the crucial part. It had to sound authentic. Like Jake. Based on the tone of his texts to Emma, he was charming, a little sentimental, with a touch of that easy confidence. I drafted and redrafted the message a dozen times. Happy birthday, Melissa. Thinking of you today and always. Hope it's as special as you are. Love always, Jake. It felt right. Close enough to genuine, laced with just enough history to make Melissa pause, to make her wonder, to make her, hopefully, call Jake. Throughout this whole clandestine operation, Emma was a whirlwind of texts. Counting down the hours. So excited for tonight. Got a new dress, hope you like it. Each message was like a tiny paper cut. I'd reply with bland affirmations, my own heart a cold, heavy stone in my chest. The hurt was still there, a constant thrum beneath the surface. The anger, too, a simmering resentment. But overlaying it all now was a strange, detached calm. I'd made a decision. I'd set a plan in motion. All I had to do now was see it through. That evening, as I got dressed for our anniversary dinner, knotting my tie with meticulous precision, My reflection in the mirror looked like a stranger. Composed. Resolute. Dangerous, even. My phone rang. The florist. Just confirming, sir, the bouquet for Melissa has been successfully delivered and signed for. Excellent, I said, my voice even. Thank you. I picked Emma up at 7. She looked stunning, radiant in a new emerald green dress that shimmered when she moved. She chattered excitedly all the way to the restaurant, completely, blissfully, unaware of the carefully arranged bouquet that had landed on another woman's desk that afternoon. A floral hand grenade with the pin already pulled. Levere was even more opulent than I remembered from the pictures online. Crystal chandeliers dripped from the ceiling, hushed string music filled the air, and waiters glided between tables with silent, practiced efficiency. Emma's eyes widened as we were led to our secluded booth. David, this is incredible. She seemed a little off, though, distracted. Her phone, which she'd clutched in her hand in the car, was placed face down on the white linen tablecloth, but her eyes kept darting towards it. I, on the other hand, played the role of doting boyfriend to perfection, attentive, romantic, showering her with compliments, reminiscing about our early dates. I was almost convincing myself. Everything okay? I asked, after she'd excused herself to the bathroom for the 3rd time in less than an hour, taking her phone with her each time. Oh, fine, just, little bit of a nervous stomach. Excitement, I guess, she said with a quick, unconvincing smile. The waiter arrived with the champagne I'd pre-ordered, pouring it with a flourish. I raised my glass. To us, I said, meeting her eyes. 6 months down, a lifetime to go? She clinked her glass against mine, but her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. To us. Just as we were halfway through our appetizers, some sort of deconstructed scallop dish that cost more than my weekly grocery bill, Emma's phone, which she'd reluctantly placed back on the table, buzzed. A call. She glanced at the screen, her expression tightening. Oh, shoot. So sorry, David, I have to take this. It's work. That conference thing is still a bit of a mess. She hurried away from the table, phone pressed to her ear, and stepped outside onto the restaurant's small, private terrace. I watched her through the large glass window. Her back was to me, but her posture was tense, her free hand gesturing animatedly. It wasn't a quick call. It stretched on for a good 10 minutes. I sipped my champagne, the bubbles feeling like tiny explosions on my tongue. When she finally returned, her face was flushed, her eyes a little wild. So sorry about that, she said, sliding back into the booth. Crisis averted, again. She attempted a laugh, but it sounded strained. No problem at all, I said smoothly. Shall we have another toast? How about to honesty and new beginnings? I looked directly at her as I said it. Her eyes widened almost imperceptibly. Her phone, back on the table, began to buzz again. Not a call this time, but a rapid succession of notifications. Texts, most likely. She kept trying to subtly glance at it, then quickly look away, her fingers fidgeting with her napkin. The buzzing was relentless, a persistent, annoying insect in the otherwise serene atmosphere of the restaurant. She took a large gulp of her champagne, pushed her half-eaten scallops around her plate. You know, she said, her voice suddenly small. I'm not feeling too great, actually. That nervous stomach, I guess. Would you mind terribly if we maybe cut dinner short? I feigned concern. Oh, of course not. Are you sure you're okay? She nodded, already gathering her purse, her eyes fixed on that relentlessly buzzing phone. Yeah, just need to get home. The performance was nearing its climax, and Emma was quite clearly starting to unravel. Of course, I said, my voice a perfect blend of concern and understanding. Let's get you home. I signaled for the check, maintaining my composed facade. Inside, a cold satisfaction was beginning to bloom. The seeds I'd sown were starting to sprout. The car ride back to her apartment was thick with a tension you could have sliced with a knife. Emma was ramrod straight in the passenger seat, her gaze fixed on her phone screen, thumbs flying across the keyboard in a flurry of messages. The occasional sniffle punctuated the silence. I drove, saying nothing, letting the quiet hum of the engine and the rhythmic thud of her texting fill the space between us. We pulled up outside her building. She unbuckled her seatbelt, but hesitated, her hand on the door handle. Are you going to come up?" she asked, her voice suave, uncertain. She looked anxious, cornered. "Sure," I said, keeping my tone neutral. Her phone, which had been momentarily quiet, rang. A proper call this time. The screen lit up with a name I now knew all too well. Jake. Emma's eyes darted from the phone to my face, panic flaring in their depths. She quickly pressed the reject button, her hand trembling slightly. The phone immediately started ringing again. Jake, persistent. I turned to her, my expression calm, almost gentle. "You should probably take that," I said, my voice even. "I think Jake needs to talk to you. About Melissa." The blood drained from her face. Her mouth fell open slightly, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and dawning horror. What did you say? How do you—" "I know about the birthday plans, Emma," I said, still in that same calm, measured tone. "The ones for Melissa. The ones that just so happened to coincide with our anniversary." Her shock quickly morphed into defensiveness. "David, you don't understand. It's not what you think. Jake and I, we have a history. Melissa, she's an old friend. I was just helping him out." Her voice was rising, a note of desperation creeping in. "Helping him out?" I echoed, my own calmness starting to feel a little strained. "Is that what you call it? Planning her birthday, choosing her gifts, just like old times?" I paused, letting the words hang in the air. Then, the kicker. "I sent flowers to Melissa today, Emma. From Jake. White lilies and pink roses. Her favorites, I believe." Her jaw literally dropped. She stared at me, speechless, her face a mask of disbelief. The color was returning to her cheeks, but this time it was a flush of anger, of outrage. Her phone, still clutched in her hand, began to ring again. Jake, relentless. I reached for my own door handle. "I think," I said, my voice dropping a little, "that's my cue to leave." I opened the door, the click of the latch echoing in the sudden, suffocating silence of the car. As I stepped out, I heard her finally, shakily, answer the call. "Jake, what's going on? Why are you—" I didn't wait to hear the rest. I turned and walked away, the sounds of her panicked voice fading behind me. The first domino had fallen. Now it was time to watch the rest of the carefully constructed charade come crashing down. I wasn't even halfway to my car when I heard her. David, wait!" I stopped, turned. Emma was scrambling out of her car, her new emerald dress catching the streetlight, phone still pressed to her ear. She looked frantic, her earlier composure completely shattered. She ended the call abruptly, shoving her phone into her purse as she hurried towards me across the parking lot. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she hissed, her voice tight with fury. "You have no right to interfere in things you don't understand." My own calm, so carefully maintained all evening, finally began to crack. The hurt, the betrayal, the weeks of suppressed anger, it all came bubbling to the surface. "No right, Emma?" I shot back, my voice louder than I intended. "I have no right to know that my girlfriend is spending our anniversary planning a birthday party for her ex's other ex. I have no right to know that she's been lying to me for weeks, maybe months." "It wasn't like that," she insisted, her eyes flashing. I was just helping Jake. He's been going through a lot since he and Melissa broke up again. He wanted to make a gesture, to try and make amends. I was just supporting a friend." "Supporting a friend?" I scoffed. "The texts didn't sound like supporting a friend, Emma. They sounded like two people who are still very much entangled." "Miss you like crazy? It's complicated? That doesn't sound like friendship to me." Her anger seemed to deflate slightly, replaced by a weary defensiveness. "Okay, fine," she admitted, her voice dropping. "It is complicated. My feelings, they're confused. For both of you." There it was. The admission. Not a full confession, but a crack in the facade. "Jake has been trying to get me back. For months," she continued, tears welling in her eyes now. "Ever since he and Melissa split for good. He says he made a mistake choosing her, that it was always me." The tears started to fall then, tracing paths through her carefully applied makeup. "I never meant to hurt you, David. I swear, I didn't know what to do. I was so confused." A cold, hard realization settled in my gut. She wasn't just confused. She was hedging her bets. I was the safe option, the steady boyfriend, while she figured out if she wanted to dive back into the drama with Jake. I was her safety net. The thought was like a punch to the chest. Her phone buzzed again. Another call. She fumbled for it, glanced at the screen. "It's Jake again," she whispered, her voice trembling. She listened for a moment, her eyes widening. "Melissa called him. About the flowers. She thinks he sent them. She's apparently really touched." She looked up at me, her expression a mixture of fear and fury. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" she accused, her voice raw. Before I could answer, headlights swept across the parking lot. A car, a sporty-looking coupe I vaguely recognized from the photos, pulled up sharply beside Emma's. The driver's side door opened, and Jake stepped out. Jake, in the flesh. He was taller than I'd imagined from the photos, with that same easy, confident swagger. He looked annoyed, his brow furrowed as he strode towards us. He didn't even glance at me initially, his focus entirely on Emma. "What the hell is going on, Em?" he demanded, his voice tight. "Melissa just called me crying, saying the flowers were beautiful and she wants to talk. What flowers? Did you send her flowers from me?" Emma looked like a deer caught in headlights, her gaze darting between Jake and me. "Jake, it's complicated." Complicated? He finally seemed to register my presence, his eyes narrowing. "Who's this?" "This is David," Emma said, her voice barely a whisper. "My boyfriend." Jake's eyes widened slightly, then hardened. He looked from me to Emma and back again, a slow, dawning understanding spreading across his face. "Boyfriend? What are you talking about? What about—" He trailed off, but the implication hung heavy in the air. "What about us?" "He's the one who sent the flowers to Melissa," Emma blurted out, gesturing towards me. "From you." Jake's head snapped towards me, his expression a mixture of disbelief and anger. "You? Why the hell would you do that?" "Maybe," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Because I thought Melissa deserved to know what kind of man she was dealing with, what kind of woman I was dealing with." The pieces started to click into place for Jake, visibly. He looked at Emma, a new, colder light in his eyes. "Melissa's birthday. That's today, isn't it? And you?" He looked at me. "You said our anniversary earlier to Emma on the phone when she was walking over to you." He was sharp. I'd give him that. Emma stood between us, her duplicity laid bare, illuminated by the harsh glare of the parking lot lights. She looked small, fragile, and utterly caught. "So, let me get this straight," Jake said, his voice dangerously quiet. You were helping me plan a birthday surprise for Melissa, making me think maybe there was a chance for us again, all while you had a boyfriend? And it's his anniversary with you today? The same day as Melissa's birthday?" He let out a short, harsh laugh. "Wow, Emma. Still playing games, huh? Just like old times." That's when it happened. Jake looked at me, really looked at me. And for a fleeting second, there was no animosity, no rivalry. Just a shared, weary understanding. The look of two men who'd been played by the same woman, caught in the same web of her indecision and deceit. We'd both been manipulated. Jake's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. A text. "It's Melissa," he said, a strange expression on his face. She wants to meet, to talk about us, about trying again." He looked from the phone to Emma, then to me. He seemed almost grateful. Emma made a desperate sound, a choked sob. "Jake, please." But he was already turning away. He paused by his car door, then looked back at me. "You know," he said, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips, "for a meddling psycho, you actually did me a favor." He got into his car, started the engine, and with a final, unreadable look at Emma, he drove off, presumably to meet Melissa, to talk about reconciliation, all thanks to a bouquet of misattributed flowers. The roar of Jake's departing car faded, leaving Emma and me standing in an awkward, suffocating silence. The adrenaline of the confrontation was ebbing away, leaving behind a dull, throbbing ache. Emma's anger seemed to have completely dissolved, replaced by a raw, desperate vulnerability. "David," she began, her voice trembling, tears streaming freely down her face now. "Please, you have to understand. I was so confused. I didn't know what I wanted." I looked at her, at the woman I had loved, or thought I had loved. The anger was still there, but it was mixed with a profound sadness, a deep disappointment. "Why, Emma?" I asked, my voice quiet, devoid of accusation, just a genuine need to understand. "Why stay with me if you still had feelings for him, if you were still so entangled?" She sank down onto the curb, her shoulders shaking. "I don't know," she whispered, her voice choked with sobs. "I was scared. Scared of being alone, I guess. Scared of making the wrong choice. With Jake, it was always so intense. So much drama. With you, it was easy, comfortable, safe. Safe. I was the safe option." The thought stung more than I expected. "So I was just a placeholder? A comfortable port in your emotional storm until you decided if you wanted to sail back out into the hurricane with Jake?" She looked up at me, her eyes pleading. "No, it wasn't like that. I do care about you, David. I really do. I've been torn. Ever since he came back into the picture, I've been living a double life, and it's been tearing me apart." She admitted she'd been confused, pulled in two directions, pretty much since Jake and Melissa had broken up, which was right around the time she and I had started dating. The beginning. Our entire relationship had been built on this fault line. The pain was sharp, but in that moment something else crystallized within me. A sense of clarity, a certainty. I deserved more than this. I deserved someone who was all in, someone whose heart wasn't divided, someone who wouldn't use me as a safety net. "Emma," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "I can't do this. I won't do this." "No, David, please," she begged, scrambling to her feet, reaching for my hand. "Give me another chance. I'll cut ties with Jake, completely, I promise. We can work through this." I pulled my hand away, shaking my head slowly. The trust was gone, shattered into a million irreparable pieces. "I don't think we can, Emma." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the key to her apartment. The one she'd given me that night. The one that had felt like a promise. I held it out to her. "I think this is yours." Her face crumpled. The last vestiges of hope seemed to drain from her. She took the key, her fingers brushing mine for a fleeting second. The tears came harder now, racking sobs that shook her whole body. She understood. It was over, really over. I looked at her one last time. This woman who had, for a brief, shining period, made me believe in love again. And then, with a heavy heart, I turned and walked towards my car. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The sound of her crying followed me, a mournful soundtrack to the end of us. The 2 weeks that followed were a blur of attempting to process. It wasn't just a breakup. It was the dismantling of a reality I'd believed in. My friends were great, rallying around me with a mixture of sympathetic beers and righteous anger on my behalf. I even booked a session with a therapist, something I'd been considering for a while, even before the Emma implosion. Talking about it, laying out the messy, painful details to a neutral third party, actually helped. It was like cleaning out a wound. It stung, but it was necessary. I methodically cleared Emma's things from my apartment. The spare toothbrush, the oversized sweater she always wore on lazy Sundays, the little framed photo of us from that beach trip. Each item was a small pang, a reminder of what I'd thought we had. I packed them all into a box, which I then unceremoniously dropped off at her doorman. No note, no last words. Just closure. Then, a text message popped up on my phone. An unknown number. "Hey, David, it's Jake. Wondering if you'd be up for grabbing a coffee sometime? No agenda, just thought it might be interesting to talk." My first instinct was to delete it. What could we possibly have to say to each other? But then, a strange sort of curiosity took hold. I hesitated for a day, then, against my better judgment, I texted back. "Sure, when and where?" We met at a neutral coffee shop downtown, the kind with exposed brick and painfully hip baristas. It was awkward, undeniably. Two guys whose only connection was having been involved with the same woman, a woman who had, in her own way, managed to deceive them both. But as we started talking, the awkwardness began to dissipate. Jake was surprisingly normal. Not the villain I'd half expected him to be. He explained that he and Melissa were talking again, properly. The flowers, however bizarrely they'd arrived, had apparently been the catalyst. A crack of light in a door that had been firmly shut. "She thought I'd finally grown up a bit," he said with a wry smile. "Guess your little stunt made me look surprisingly thoughtful." He told me Emma had been trying to reconcile with him, sending long, pleading texts and voicemails. He hadn't responded. "I'm done with that drama," he said, and I believed him. She needs to figure her own stuff out, and honestly, after seeing how she was playing both of us, I realized I was probably just as much a part of the problem, always going back for more of that chaos. We talked for over an hour. About Emma, yes, but also about other things. Work, life. The strange, unexpected ways things can unfold. An odd sort of camaraderie developed between us. Two unwilling members of the same very specific, very messed up club. As we were leaving, Jake clapped me on the shoulder. "Thanks, man," he said, and it sounded genuine. "For the coffee. And, for the flowers. Inadvertently, you gave me some serious clarity." I walked out of the coffee shop feeling lighter. Not happy, not yet. But a sense of closure had settled over me. The anger had mostly faded, replaced by a weary understanding. As I reached my car, my phone buzzed. A text from Emma. "Can we please talk? I miss you." I looked at the message for a long moment. Then, I put the phone in my pocket without replying. Some doors were better left closed. 6 months. It's funny how a time frame can hold such different meanings. 6 months with Emma had felt like a whirlwind, a rapid ascent followed by an even more rapid plummet. These past 6 months on my own, however, had been about rebuilding, slowly, deliberately. My architecture career was thriving. I'd thrown myself into work, and it had paid off. A promotion? A lead role on a challenging new project. The clean lines and solid structures I designed felt like a metaphor for what I was trying to build in my own life. Stability, strength. I'd hear occasional updates about the others through the grapevine of mutual acquaintances. Jake and Melissa were cautiously dating again. Apparently, my ill-conceived floral arrangement had, against all odds, sparked something genuine. Good for them, I thought, with a surprising lack of bitterness. Emma, I heard, was still single. Her attempts to reconnect with me had dwindled, from frantic texts and calls in the early weeks to occasional melancholic emails, and finally, to silence. I hoped she was finding her way. My friends, bless their persistent hearts, kept trying to set me up. "You need to get back out there, David," they'd chirp, full of well-meaning enthusiasm. I'd gone on a few dates. They were fine. Polite conversations over mediocre food. But nothing clicked. I wasn't ready. The ghost of Emma, or rather, the ghost of the betrayal, still lingered, making me wary, hesitant. One Saturday afternoon, I found myself in a familiar place. The flower shop, the one from that fateful day. My mom's birthday was coming up, and she adored peonies. As I was discussing arrangements with the same kind-faced florist, she paused, a flicker of recognition in her eyes. "You know," she said, a thoughtful smile playing on her lips, "I remember you. You were in here about 6 months ago. White lilies and pink roses, wasn't it? For a Melissa?" I felt a flush creep up my neck. "Ah, yes. That was a complicated situation. So, complicated good or complicated bad?" A new voice chimed in. I turned. Standing beside me was a woman I hadn't noticed before. She had warm, intelligent eyes, and a smile that was both curious and kind. She was holding a small bunch of sunflowers. Complicated in a way that involved sending flowers from someone else, apparently, the florist supplied, her eyes twinkling. The woman with the sunflowers laughed, a pleasant, easy sound. "Well, that does sound intriguing." And just like that, I found myself, somewhat awkwardly, recounting a heavily edited PG version of the Emma/Jake/Melissa saga to 2 near strangers in a flower shop. The woman, her name was Lily, fittingly enough, listened with a genuine interest that was disarming. "Wow," she said when I'd finished my tale. "That's quite a story. Sounds like you handled a messy situation with a rather creative approach." "Creative is one word for it," I said, rubbing the back of my neck. "Possibly insane is another." Lily smiled. "Well, I'm a fan of honesty, even when it's delivered via a misaddressed bouquet." We talked for a few more minutes, about flowers, about relationships, about the surprising ways life can unfold. It was easy, natural, no pressure. As I was paying for my mom's peonies, Lily was at the counter too. On an impulse, I said, "Hey, I know this is random, but would you maybe want to get coffee sometime? To continue our fascinating discussion on floral subterfuge?" She grinned. "I'd like that." We exchanged numbers, just like that. Walking out of the flower shop, peonies in hand, a lightness I hadn't felt in months settled over me. Maybe, just maybe, I was ready to consider dating again. But this time, with new boundaries, new expectations, and a much keener eye for red flags. Or, perhaps, for sunflowers. I found myself texting Lily before I even reached my car. "Coffee soon? And for the record, if I ever buy you flowers, they'll definitely be from me." Our coffee date turned into lunch, which then stretched into a long walk through the park. The conversation with Lily flowed easily, like we'd known each other for years. There was a genuine connection, a spark of something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Early on, I decided to be upfront. I told her the full, unedited version of the Emma story. The hurt, the betrayal, the slightly unhinged flower plan. I laid it all out, figuring if this was going to scare her off, better now than later. She listened patiently, thoughtfully. And then she shared her own stories. Her own experiences with partners whose loyalties had been divided, whose pasts had a habit of intruding on the present. There was a comforting solidarity in her shared history, a sense of being understood without judgment. Honesty, she said, stirring her latte. It's such a simple concept, but so many people seem to struggle with it. Even when it's uncomfortable, it's always better in the long run, don't you think? I nodded, a sense of profound agreement washing over me. Absolutely. I learned that the hard way. Talking to Lily, I realized something significant. The anger I'd carried for so long, the bitterness towards Emma, it had faded. It was still a painful memory, a scar that would likely always be there. But it wasn't an open wound anymore. It was just a lesson. A very expensive, emotionally taxing lesson, but a lesson nonetheless. About trust, about self-worth, about the importance of being with someone who is fully, unequivocally present. A few weeks later, Lily and I were having dinner at a new Thai restaurant she'd wanted to try. As we were laughing over something silly, I glanced towards the entrance, and my breath caught in my throat. Emma. She was standing there, waiting to be seated, with another guy. Our eyes met. A flicker of surprise, then a cascade of other emotions, recognition, regret, something that looked like sadness, crossed her face. The guy she was with looked oblivious, chatting animatedly. She said something to him, then, to my surprise, she walked over to our table. Lily looked from Emma to me, her expression calm, observant. David, Emma said, her voice quiet. Hi. Emma, I replied, keeping my own voice even. This is Lily. Nice to meet you, Emma said, offering Lily a small, polite smile. Lily returned the greeting. The air was thick with unspoken history. I just wanted to say... Emma hesitated, her gaze dropping to the table. I heard about Jake and Melissa. They're back together. For good, it seems. He told me. There was a note of finality in her voice, a weary acceptance. I guess. Your flowers worked out for someone, at least. A faint, sad smile touched her lips. I hope you're doing okay, Emma, I said, and I meant it. I felt a surprising wave of compassion, not just for her, but for all of us who'd been caught in that tangled mess, for myself, for the pain I'd endured. I'm getting there, she said. You look happy? Her eyes flickered towards Lily, then back to me. I am, I said. And as I looked at Lily, at her warm, understanding smile, I knew it was true. Emma nodded, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. Good, you deserve to be. She gave a small, awkward wave, then turned and walked back to her date, who was now looking a little confused. Lily reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You okay? I squeezed back. Yeah, I really am. We continued our dinner, the past feeling finally firmly in the past. The spicy noodles tasted even better. A year. 12 months since that chaotic anniversary dinner, since the flower delivery that had sent shockwaves through several lives. Lily and I were exclusive now, our relationship built on a foundation of honesty and laughter, a comfortable, steady rhythm that felt like coming home. I found myself back in that same flower shop. Again. It was becoming a recurring motif in my life, apparently. This time there was no subterfuge, no hidden agenda. I was ordering a bouquet for Lily. It was the anniversary of our first coffee date, the one that had started with a story about misaddressed flowers. The florist, the same kind-faced woman, recognized me instantly. "Well, hello again," she said, her eyes twinkling. "Let me guess. Not white lilies and pink roses this time." I laughed. "Definitely not. Something a little more straightforward. Sunflowers, actually. A big, bright bunch." Lily's favorite. "Sunflowers it is," she said, smiling. "It's nice to see you looking so much happier. That other time, you looked like you were carrying the weight of the world." "Something like that," I admitted. As she gathered the sunflowers, their cheerful yellow faces a stark contrast to the complicated symbolism of those lilies and roses, I reflected on how one, seemingly small, decision could ripple outwards, changing the course of so many lives. Mine, Emma's, Jake's, Melissa's. My phone buzzed. A text message. It was from Jake, a photo. Him and Melissa, beaming, her hand held up to show off a sparkling diamond ring on her finger. The caption read, "She said yes, drinks on us soon to celebrate. Couldn't have done it without some unexpected floral intervention a while back." I smiled, a genuine, uncomplicated smile. I typed back a quick, "Congratulations, man. Thrilled for you both." And I was, truly. Later that evening, I gave Lily the sunflowers. Her face lit up, that warm, infectious smile that I'd come to adore. Tucked into the vibrant yellow blooms was a small card. She pulled it out, her brow furrowed in curiosity. She read it aloud. "To new beginnings with someone fully present. Thank you for showing me what that feels like. Happy anniversary." Her eyes, when she looked up at me, were shining. She leaned in and kissed me, a long, sweet kiss that tasted of promises kept and futures hoped for. "You know," I said, holding her close, the scent of sunflowers filling the air. "Sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most authentic beginnings." I thought back to that night, to the anger, the betrayal, the calculated act of revenge. I never thought I'd be grateful for that disaster of an anniversary, for those damned flowers. But looking at you now, I met her gaze, my heart full. I couldn't imagine being anywhere else. This was real. This was present. And it was exactly where I was supposed to be. 2 years later. David, 34, Lily, 32, engaged. The ring on Lily's finger wasn't a surprise, a dramatic reveal. It was a conversation, a mutual decision, a quiet understanding that this was it. This was forever. An invitation arrived in the mail. Thick, creamy cardstock, elegant calligraphy. Jake and Melissa. Requesting the honor of our presence at their wedding, Lily raised an eyebrow at me, a smile playing on her lips. "Well, this is unexpected." "Life's full of surprises," I said, already knowing we'd go. The wedding was beautiful. A rustic barn, fairy lights twinkling, laughter and love filling the air. Jake looked genuinely happy, a far cry from the angry, confused man I'd met in that parking lot. Melissa was radiant. We saw Emma there. She was with a new partner, a kind-looking guy with a gentle smile. The exchange was brief, cordial. There were no lingering shadows, no awkward silences. She looked grounded, more at peace than I'd ever seen her. We wished each other well, and it felt sincere. During the speeches, Jake raised a glass. "To unexpected twists," he said, his eyes finding mine across the crowded room. "And to some misaddressed flowers that, through a very strange series of events, found their way to exactly where they needed to be. They didn't just bring Melissa and me back together. They sort of recalibrated a few lives, I think." He winked. Lily squeezed my hand under the table, her eyes sparkling with amusement and affection. "Life is weird," she whispered. I looked at her, at the woman who had shown me what true partnership felt like, what it meant to be fully seen, fully accepted. "The flowers meant to expose a lie," I murmured, more to myself than to her, "somehow managed to lead us all toward truth." I thought of the chaos, the heartbreak, the eventual, unexpected peace. Sometimes the most unexpected gestures create exactly the disruption we need. And sometimes, out of the wreckage of what was, something far more beautiful, far more real, can finally begin to bloom.